next speaker, we have Bob Wyborn. Speaking of this large world that we need to address, so Bob is our friend from down under. And it's going to be speaking about newborn blood spot screening, a global perspective.
Thank you, Florian. I just want to spend the next few minutes looking at newborn blood spot screening from a different perspective, from outside of the lab, if I may. So what is newborn blood spot screening? It is a total population healthcare program. So I tend to look at that as the total population of the world, the total population of this country, or individual countries. I see it as a total program, not necessarily just ALD. In other words, we need to look at all disorders in this fashion. It is designed specifically to prevent babies from being born. I think I'm moving my hand away from the mic. It is designed specifically to prevent babies being born with life-limiting illnesses. It must always remain an evolutionary program. Now, as I've looked around the world, that's exactly what I don't see. I certainly see it here in the USA. For example, in Britain in 2013, they tested for 5 and only 5 disorders. 2019, they're now testing for 9. So it saddens me a little bit that we aren't moving globally as well as we should be. It requires a national program, a national policy, and a national framework. And it must be driven by the condition and not the technology. It must be safe and with the highest quality controls and integrity. And families must always be the core of the program. So who is screening? One country only at the moment in total. So thank you very much, Stefan, and your team. And before I get hit with flying shoes and all the rest of it, I have to move quickly to the wonderful work that's being done in the USA. So I think everyone's seen that slide, so I don't need to go through that in detail. Just to give you a global perspective and to bring you up to date, November the 1st last year, I submitted a nomination to the Standing Committee on Screening in Australia for ALD. It was accepted for investigation. The process seems to be a 2 to 3 year one, as it is all around the world. And then just recently, in October the 10th, I got an email from Professor Murphy to say that they were taking the nomination for further detailed review, which is very, very encouraging. And I hope to be standing here this time next year telling you that we're screening throughout Australia for ALD. Quickly going around the globe, New Zealand has applied and they've been unsuccessful, and the reason given was money. Argentina's working on screening at the moment, and it looks fairly hopeful. The UK, as I mentioned, the red 9 is the 9 diseases they're screening for now. But their standard arguments, lack of money, no biomarker, and they give anxiety as a huge reason. And I really get quite annoyed about that. I cannot understand for the life of me why you would prevent screening for a child because the anxiety that mum and dad may have that child will get ALD when diagnosed with it exceeds the benefit. In other words, the option is death, isn't it? I just don't get that one. Europe. Generally, I've looked through Europe and seen that they all tend to be working on a framework now, an actual policy of framework. So I think that a lot more activity will come once that framework is put together. And I actually have the Australian policy document with me, if anyone wants to look at it. I have been speaking to a young lass in Slovakia who's trying to push it, but they have economic issues. Similar with Asia, Bangladesh and India. China's a different story. I had an opportunity to go, or I was invited to go there last year, but unfortunately it clashed with something else. Canada, there's no screening in Quebec. Ontario, the professor there told me that he'd had a look at it and he'd put it back on hold till next year. But it's my understanding that he's now going to talk to Stefan very shortly. So I'm hoping that'll reopen again. And Nova Scotia claimed, that MRIs are bad for kids. So I've sent more information to them, and we're I'm hoping that'll get overturned. And of course, if that happens, the 3 maritime provinces will come on board. So, which is Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. So what are the retardants to ALD screening? Everything on this slide and the next slide are things that have been told to me by committees in different governments for the reasons for knocking back ALD screening. So they're not something that I've made up. There's the claim there's no biomarker. Well, that's a fairly uneducated comment. We have an excellent biomarker for adrenal insufficiency, and of course the MRI for ALD. The argument is, we don't have a cure. Why would we test if we don't have a cure? Once again, uneducated. The stem cell therapy has great outcomes. And once again, what's the option if we don't do that? Death. No money, too expensive. I find that rubbish. The minute you diagnose your first child with ALD, you've got your money back for any additional tandem mass machines you've had to buy. I did some homework in the state I live in, which is Queensland, which is larger than Alaska, to give you a size issue, but with much less people. And for a handful of people with ALD, the Queensland government spent $5.36 million. And that's no ED or outpatient costs. So I cannot understand why it's why is it too expensive? Anxiety issues. My pet hate is that word anxiety. It's the buzzword at the moment, or it's another buzzword. It's beyond my belief that you would knock back screening because people get too anxious at worrying about whether their child will or will not get the cerebral version. I can't find any data on it to back that belief up. No framework or national programs. Most countries seem to be working on it, some form of national program at the moment, and I'd imagine you would call the RUSP probably the American equivalent. All gender test, the argument of gender testing has come up, as Stefan was just talking about, but we know that we can test either or both now. Obviously, newborn screenings, if you don't have a healthcare system, well, then newborn screening is not going to be possible. No pilot studies is another argument thrown up. Well, that's not true. There's pilot studies going on in this country, and we have pilot studies that starting in Australia as well. There's this reluctance to accept other countries' data or other states' data, which really makes me boil. But Australia seems to have to double test everything. If you do it and you do it well, we've still got to do it again. And they haven't forgotten the crab eggs New York experience from years ago. The variance in testing procedures and multiplexing, I don't think that's quite a bigger issue as it was, particularly with the Perkins-Elmer newborn screening test. And then genomic testing, I think, is an argument thrown up. And what I've learned, or what's been learned from genomic testing, is that yes, we can identify more people and we can do it at less cost, but it's still a lot of cost. And what really concerns me, because I'm looking at newborn blood spot screening as an overall population program, is that most chronic disorders are non-pathogenic. So what happens if we just forget about them? That worries me. So what are the accelerants? What are the things that are going to make it easier? I think we need to look at a Bill of Rights, for children, for newborn screening, that is far more specific than the Palmer Charter. I think we need to get our national program for states, territories, regions established. I believe we need a global approach with one platform. I think we need to look at, a global ALD concordance or newborn screening council, or call it whatever you wish, that specifically targets, what are the latest screening methods, what's the latest data, what's the latest experiences that we have. We need to do a lot more in paper and on papers and studies. And I'm in the process of doing one now, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because we just need more data. And we need to be very politically astute. And I think, I can't see if Elise is there, but we have to spend a lot more time, with our governments. I think we need a Bill of Rights, as I mentioned before. The United Nations says that every child under 18 has 54 rights. I guess if you've been married and got kids, you probably get told that just about every day. But what I'd like to be saying is that we say that every newborn child is entitled to live and have the best level of health. That every newborn child is entitled to be treated equally and with every opportunity to live irrespective of their condition at birth. Every newborn child is entitled to all the medical procedures to ensure their best quality of life. And every newborn is a person that is entitled to their dignity and their rights. And anyone who wants to help me finish that is very welcome to come on board. Now, I'm doing a qualitative study at the moment, or we're just about to, because I got very annoyed, particularly with this anxiety argument. Having a leading geneticist on the screening panel who's going to make a decision on whether ALD will be accepted in Australia, telling me that the anxiety issue exceeded the life of a child. In other words, I just don't get that. So I thought, well, we've got to get some data to prove or disprove that. So the point of the study is to look at the patient and healthcare professionals' perspective on newborn blood spot screening. This study will provide critically needed patient-focused data, the evidence-based for the design, sorry, I've got a dry throat, for the design of specialised health interventions and service. So what are we looking for outcomes? Verification of what the patient needs. Thanks, mate. From which we can build models of care. And I think that's critical. And the speakers just before have touched on that. After you're screened and told that you have ALD, what have we got set up? What are our models to support our families? To look at the establishment also of multidisciplinary collaboration. I think I first heard that term here many years ago. And if I look at it at a global basis, and I'll talk about my backyard and no one else is that I don't find a great deal of multidisciplinary collaboration. It seems to be like 1948. There's just, you know, some people are more perfect or some people are more equal than others. The aim is to canvass the perspectives of the people involved affected by ALD, the patients, those at risk, and those involved, both healthcare professionals and the total caring community. And also to look at the nature and level of current care, including the attitudes to screening and early detection for ALD. The specific objectives to document people's experience with health interventions and health services offered and those decision-making processes. To explore people's experience with testing. When was it offered? What was offered? Where and why? My pet little one, to canvass people's responses to test results, and particularly the levels of anxiety, stress, distress, eustress, or any other reaction. I'm very concerned on this, this issue of anxiety. It's become another buzzword to me. You know, the buzzword of depression, we've had that for about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I read something about 2 weeks ago where babies are born with anxiety. I just shake my head. So we need to qualify that. I've never spoken to a parent of a recently diagnosed child who felt that the distress or the worry exceeded the fact that their child would now live. We need to capture people's opinions and attitudes to testing, and therefore to whom we offer it. We have cultural issues in that area. And also to identify specific healthcare gaps and opportunities from both perspectives. Now, one of the gaps that I saw filled about 6-7 days ago that literally brought me to tears was Florian Eichler with a baby on his knee singing to this baby. And I literally did cry, because that was a gap, that happens so often in medicine, where we have that distancing, that professional distancing, when we stand back, which tells mum and dad immediately, we don't care, we're too worried. When someone shows love and concern, that gap is filled. Thank you, Florian. That was really it really made my day. So what I want to do is go back to breakfast. And I'm sure most of you have seen this and know the end result to this slide. But from this, I want us to gather motivation. Because if we look at that, the chicken was involved, the pig was committed. And I think we need a lot more people, and we need people to be committed. And Melissa, I just want to congratulate you for being, I can't say for being a pig, for being a wonderfully, wonderful, committed person. The person who has really driven newborn screening all around the world. So thank you. I'll leave you with that.
Africa. Is there anything going on in that continent? I didn't hear you touch on that. I heard the other areas of the world, but Africa's kind of a dark zone.
I have no idea what's happening in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. I really don't.
Yeah, it's just kind of a dark zone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. No, Justin, I think that's overall in genetics a big problem. And I think I was at the American Society for Human Genetics, and there was a big platform on the problems of our lack of understanding of the African genome. And so I think it comes back to that whole point of disparity here.